It was the kind of morning that felt like a whisper. The sky was still sleepy, painted in soft strokes of lavender and pale gold, while the trees outside rustled ever so gently, as if they, too, were unsure whether to wake up yet. The town was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds seemed to be holding their breath. In the heart of this small, pine-wrapped town, nestled deep within the Pacific Northwest, lived a little girl named Lila. She was just 5 years old, but there was something in her that made people pause. Not in a bad way, just something. A stillness, a knowing. Her neighbors would say she had an old soul, the kind of child who stared at the clouds a little too long, who hummed songs no one taught her, who would sit cross-legged in the garden and speak to butterflies like they were old friends. She was quiet, but never shy, strange, but never odd, sweet, but not soft. And Lila had a routine. Every morning, rain or shine, she would walk to Willow Creek Elementary hand in hand with her mother. It was a short walk, just 5 blocks, but Lila insisted on taking the path through the woods instead of the main road. It added 10 more minutes to the journey, but she never once complained. "The trees like it when I visit," she'd once said. Her mother, a young widow named Clara, didn't argue. She understood. She had learned long ago that there were some things about Lila that weren't meant to be explained, only accepted. That morning, though, something felt different. Lila woke up before the alarm. She dressed herself, a soft yellow sweater, a faded pair of overalls, and her favorite rain boots, even though there wasn't a cloud in sight. She didn't ask for breakfast. She just stood at the door, waiting. Like she knew. Clara, brushing her hair into a loose bun, noticed it too. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Lila turned to her, her small fingers resting on the doorknob. Her eyes, those deep, stormy blue eyes, looked serious. "We have to go," she said simply. And so they did. The woods were unusually still. No squirrels darting between branches, no bird song. Not even the wind made a sound. It was as if the whole forest was listening. Lila walked ahead, her tiny boots crunching softly on the dew-kissed leaves. Her mother followed, stealing glances at her daughter, who moved with quiet purpose. Then, just before they reached the clearing that led to the school fence, Lila stopped. She tilted her head. A sound. Faint. Low. Almost like a growl. Clara instinctively reached for her daughter, but Lila stepped forward. "Don't be scared," she whispered. "He's hurt." Clara's heart jumped. He? Who's he, Lila? But Lila didn't answer. She crouched low behind a fallen log, peering into the dense bramble just off the trail. And then Clara saw it. Or rather, him. A large creature, covered in thick gray fur, lying still, chest heaving shallowly. Its amber eyes flickered open, alert, but not aggressive. A wolf. Clara's breath caught. She knew they existed out here, deep in the national forest, but never this close to town, never this close to children. She reached out to grab Lila's arm. We have to go. Now. Quietly. But Lila turned, shaking her head. He's not like the others, she said softly. He's mine. Clara froze. What do you mean, he's yours? But Lila didn't explain. Instead, she reached into the front pocket of her overalls and pulled out a crust of bread she had secretly saved from dinner the night before. With small, steady steps, she walked toward the wolf. Clara whispered, begged her to stop. But something in her daughter's calm, something in the way the wolf remained still, his gaze never leaving Lila, made her hesitate. Lila knelt beside the creature, slowly extending her hand. And what happened next made Clara gasp. The massive wolf, bleeding, battered, ribs showing through his coat, reached forward with his muzzle and gently, almost reverently, took the bread from the girl's hand. Not with hunger, with gratitude. His eyes closed for a moment, as if the smallest act of kindness had brought him peace. Lila stroked his fur, whispered something only he could hear. Then she looked up at her mother and smiled. He's coming with us, Clara's voice trembled. To school? Lila nodded, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. And so they walked. A 5-year-old girl, her mother, and a wounded wolf limping beside them, down the path, through the fence, across the playground. And when the other children saw them, when the teachers rushed outside, their faces filled with shock and fear, no one could believe what they were seeing. But that was only the beginning, because what they didn't know was who or what that wolf truly was. Panic spread like wildfire. Teachers screamed, phones rang, police were called. Within minutes, the schoolyard turned into a frenzy of sirens and suspicion. Clara held her daughter close while the wolf remained by Lila's side, quiet, alert. Animal control arrived. They found the chip. ID 7K9-328. Status: retired. Then another scan. Operation: Eclipse. Status: classified. They didn't take him. Not after Lila cried so hard her voice gave out. That night, Clara drove her daughter and the wolf to a small clinic on the edge of town. The sign was old, the windows dusty, but Lila had pointed at it and whispered, "He knows." Inside, the air smelled like antiseptic and lavender. A man stepped out from the back. He wore a faded military jacket and a tired smile. He looked down and froze. He dropped to one knee. "Shadow?" The wolf opened his eyes. The man choked back a gasp. "God, you made it." Clara's eyes widened. "You know him?" He nodded slowly. I was there. The mission, the explosion. Everyone thought. He gently parted the fur beneath the animal's chest. There, a puckered scar. I worked with his handler, he whispered. Sergeant James Carter, one of the best. He died saving us all. And Shadow vanished. Lila didn't speak. She simply knelt and held Shadow's paw. The man looked at her. What's your name, sweetheart? She looked up. Lila Carter. The room went silent. James? Was your father? She nodded once. He sat back, stunned. Clara's eyes filled with tears. The pieces were falling into place. Shadow hadn't wandered. He had come home, dragged himself across states, through forest and road, bleeding, broken, because something inside him remembered her, remembered his promise, to protect, to serve, to watch over the daughter of the man who died with his hand on Shadow's back. And Lila, small, strange Lila, had known all along. That night, they didn't sleep. They stayed at the clinic, Lila curled beside Shadow, who rested with his head on her lap. And when morning came, he was still there, breathing, alive, home. Shadow slowly began to heal. His wounds, both seen and unseen, faded with time and love. Each morning, Lila would walk him through the same woods where she first found him. But now, they walked together, side by side. His limp softened, his eyes brighter, and every so often he would pause, press his nose to her palm, and wag his tail like he remembered something no one else could. The town that once looked away began to take notice. The same neighbor who had called him a stray mutt now knelt down to pet him, his eyes soft with something like regret. Parents whispered. Children pointed, not in fear, but in wonder. They called him the guardian wolf. And every Sunday, Lila and Clara visited James Carter's resting place. Shadow would sit silently by the gravestone, ears alert, tail still, as if he knew exactly where they were and who they were visiting. Then, one golden afternoon, as the leaves began to turn and the air hinted at autumn, Shadow did something strange. He lifted his head and barked, not a warning, not fear, a bark of joy, because in that quiet moment, in the shimmer of light behind the stone, Lila looked up, and she could have sworn, just for a second, she saw him, a man in uniform, smiling, proud, and just like that, the shimmer faded, the wind picked up. Shadow sighed and laid his head back down on Lila's lap. Some say dogs never forget, but maybe they also never stop loving. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a soldier, a guardian, a final gift from a father who loved too deeply to ever truly leave. And Lila? She was no longer just a little girl. She was a legacy, the living proof that love, even when broken, scattered, lost across the years, can always find its way back home. Always.